Hey, everybody, it's Coach Hughes here from the Be Best You podcast. Again, the idea is in order to lead others, you have to be the best version of yourself. And one of the taglines, which we don't put on our logo, is no one's going to follow a mess. It's kind of like a bump bump. But I'm really excited. I say that before every podcast, and I mean it. I am because I get to talk to authors that I've read for the years and having that opportunity just to meet them, first of all, but then talk about their books that I love is awesome. But this gentleman here um, is somebody that I found probably 10 years ago or so when I was working in the business I'm in on between the difference between service and experience and hospitality and just how do you take a company and a brand and take it to the next level. And I came across a book called The New Gold Standard, and I've read this thing, I'm probably gonna say 4 or 5 times, and I probably recommended it to everybody who meets me to the point where they think I probably should get paid for it. But it's a privilege to do that. And then I emailed your wife, so I have a lot of reading. These are all my Christmas presents I got. So these are all the other books that the author here, yep, Joseph Michelli. Sorry about that. There, put together. He wrote all these books, and I'm going to get a chance to sit down and chat with him and pick his brain and have him share some insight. So welcome, Joseph.
Thank you, Coach Hughes. That was really good. I was going to get my checkbook out right here. I think I have one in here. I'll send
Yeah.
you the royalty payment, the payola, I guess.
Yeah. And it was what I was working. I was trying to figure out how we can take and teach young people in particular how to deliver more of an experience than a service. And what I found was a lot of them had never experienced what we were asking them to deliver. And I used the Ritz Carlton as my example. The guy I've worked with for almost 40 years, I was fortunate enough for have him to put me up at these places when I was younger, and through my career, I wouldn't have gone them in my own life because I didn't have those resources. But by him sending me to the Ritz Carlton in particular, uh, I learned that I needed to pay attention to the experiences that he was allowing me to have. And I started picking up on the little nuances of it. And I wanted to research more. And I came across your book, and it just lays it out on what the Ritz Carlton has done, but not just them. It's how you can do it with your brand, culture, and how to train people and onboard and all that. Um, and that's kind of what I got into. And I just really feel like a lot of businesses today forget that their purpose is people, meaning the employees and then the customer, and they just get lost. And I think all of your books, by the way, are must reads for anybody who's, whether you own a little knickknack shop or a full service restaurant or any companies. Guys, I would absolutely recommend you add these to your library. It's a must have. So um,
That's
it,
really
it,
kind of. I will share with you that I come from similar background. My mom didn't graduate from high school. My dad just barely did, and we didn't have a lot of money, and so Ritz Carlton wouldn't be my go-to place for
right.
experiences. But I think over time, what you learn is that those refined experiences have a lot of subtle nuances that we all can pick up. And you certainly, when I write books, I write them for some dry cleaner in Poughkeepsie. I'm
Yeah.
always thinking about a small mom and pop business that can extrapolate principles from big businesses that they don't have the budget or training resources to create. So hopefully the book can help them talk with their team members to deliver something that makes that particular dry cleaner stand out from the one across the street.
It's ironic. I actually used that as one of my examples, meaning that, I went to a dry cleaner for many years, and every time I pulled up in the same car. I went maybe once every 2 weeks, which is, I think, pretty frequent. And every time I used to go there, they would ask me for my name. And I think I went to another dry cleaner by mistake, and I went to pick it up, and they remembered me. And I just said, you know what? I'll ride the extra mile. I'll even pay an extra 25 cents a shirt just for me to feel that way. So yeah, I mean, a dry cleaner, or if it's a landscaper, all the way up to a bed and breakfast to a large franchise company, it's totally relative. And
I
I love
remember
it.
the first time I went to a dry cleaner where they offered me a bottle of water as I was driving, through just because it was a hot day.
Yeah,
It was one of those moments where how much is that bottle of water in the grand scheme? Is it something they can absorb in the price structure? And what did it mean to me? Just that there was that thoughtfulness. And, it's pretty hot out there. Can I get you a bottle of water? It's like, well, this is what my mama would have done. when people came over to our house, right? There's a certain enlightened hospitality that we can create, no matter what the business is, at marginal cost, if any.
Mhm. Yeah, no. And so some of the books you spent, actually two I have here on Starbucks, and obviously we all know that story and where they are now, and let's see what happens in the future. Zappos, great company. Um, Airbnb. I actually went this past weekend, stayed at one with my wife and son out in Boise, and that was my first Airbnb experience, and it was great. And then Mercedes Benz, and then you also just wrote Stronger Through Adversity, which I believe is the most recent book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on writing that book. I was in the middle of writing the Godiva experience. I had consulted for Godiva and also worked with the then CEO. She had come over from Starbucks. It's a small world. And lo and behold, I was about to do that book, and then COVID hit, and was working on a bunch of task forces with my clients, trying to figure out how do we keep customers
Right.
in the middle of this? How do we keep our team members safe? And listening to all those leaders, after a while, you start going, wow, everybody's struggling to figure out how to come out of this thing in better shape than they went in. And so we just start talking to leaders who gave us their insights. And they're really remarkable group in this book. I'm like
Mm.
amazed at who was kind enough to take the time. It's the CEO of Verizon, the CEO of Target, presidents of Microsoft, really amazing C-suite leadership who are all saying, hey, we are humbled by the challenges we just
Yeah.
faced.
Yeah. And if you look at through, everything from, if you just go back to the Ritz Carlton and, owned by Marriott now. And I use the example of you can stay at a Marriott on the beach, and right next door is a Ritz Carlton, and one's $500 a night, one's $180 a night. And the bedding is the
I just
same.
want to know what beach you're going to where you're getting a
Yeah, no, that's
$180 a
true.
night room. I think that's what I need to really focus
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, don't quote me on those prices.
on.
Um, but you know what? So you have kind of the same ocean view. Even the Marriott could be newer than some of the Ritz Carlton amenities, but it's the experience that they take from the driving through the gate and the landscapers waving to you and the valets knowing your name and passing in cookies, just everything. And they have so many employees. It's almost like they have as many employees as they do guests. Where you see today, um, companies are choosing to not have enough employees to take care of people. You're seeing that a lot.
Yeah, well, some of this, I mean, in all candor, there are margins that enable some of that elevated service experience, right? There's just no doubt about it. But that said, I think you have what you have, and you inspire those people to give a little more than the competition does. Give a little more attention, give a little more gratitude, give in a little more anticipation of your customers' needs. Um, Treat the customer like your livelihood depended upon it, as opposed to take them for granted as another transaction. Those things are just sometimes not even a matter of the number of employees per customer that you have available. And right now, I think almost every business is struggling to find the best possible talent to be there, in all the hours that they need them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of just that example, it's I think every company probably says that that's what they want to do, but why do you think a lot of companies lose sight of that and end up turning more into a management company than they do an experience company? I know the bottom line drives a lot of things, but it seems like a lot of companies like, oh, we want to put the guest first and we want to do this and want to do little things. I'll give you an example. I bought a Cadillac and they told me they were going to pick me up whenever I need to get my car fixed, and they were going to do this, going to do that. And every time we made a phone call to this particular dealership, I, I had to jump through hoops and I had to do it on their time. And it was really just the opposite experience of what I was sold on and what I went into. So here's a brand that says all these things and doesn't. And it seems to be a large percentage of companies are like that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One of which is that we're more interested in selling people things than we are servicing a relationship over the long term, right? So, sales are transactional. If I can make that sale, I'll promise you almost anything. and we'll worry about the next sale the next day. For a lot of people, I mean, clearly there are brands that don't do that. They really are invested in the long term. I think also operational efficiencies sometimes squeeze out the heart and soul of a business. So you definitely want to be as lean and efficient as possible, but then you have to add that extra layer. If you look at some of the research from Forrester, for example, they say essentially the brands that grow over the sustained long term are brands that meet needs of customers efficiently. Yay, exactly what we said. Make it easy and effortless for your customers. Reducing customer effort is something that drives long term success. And finally, adding an emotional engagement component, whether that's something as simple as a fond farewell, a really focused celebration of your arrival moment, any number of little things that would drive a personal emotional connection between you and your customer. Really, when you think about it, we overemphasize, maybe over-index on the meet needs, and maybe some brands, maybe more than others, efficiently helping customers get their needs met. We fail on that that third rail of the ride that's really pretty important to sustained growth.
Yeah. I was given a book. Actually, mentor of mine took me to a little coffee shop here in New Jersey and sat me down and introduced to the owner. And the owner had worked in corporate world, and he came out all excited because he knew what I did, and he was excited. And he handed me this big old book about this big, and it was the Experience Economy.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, yeah, I loved it.
and, yeah, and it
Joe
talked
Pine
about.
is a friend, as a matter of fact. He was in Stronger Through Adversity. I
Oh,
interviewed
okay.
him for just among. He's one of the two authors. He and James Gilmore wrote that book.
Love
So
an introduction on that guy there. It's because that's a great book. And the simplicity of the book this big is, the cup of coffee from the turn of the century to today. You go from 25 cents to $7. But also too, and another thing is, my first job was with a gentleman by named Mr. Hoffman. He owned an ice cream store, and I just had an opportunity to interview him before he passed.
wow,
And he said
wow,
something really important. He said that in the early day, he worked with Carvel, and then when Carvel had an opportunity, he had an opportunity to leave and do his own thing. He did, but his ice cream was more expensive, and he said that what he learned was if you have a premium product and a premium experience, then you deserve to charge a premium price. And that just hit me. It resonated with me. And I look at Starbucks when they first started, and it's harder for every company to do when they expand, but I mean, they were selling a cup of coffee at a premium price, but I think it was because of the premium experience that they were doing. I mean, and is that are you seeing that? I mean,
yeah. I can give you the quick nutshell in my view of
yeah,
the Starbucks experience and how it relates to the Experience Economy book that you referenced. So coffee is a commodity. It's right there. Yeah, there's my book. It's a commodity. It's something that's traded as a commodity in the open market. At the bean level, when it's really just barely been processed or not processed at all, if it's raw, it's worth almost nothing. I mean, it's per what is brewed cup of coffee might be 3 cents.
right.
But then somebody roasts it, somebody puts it in a position that it's served to us. In my generation, it was often served at a convenience store or a diner, and it was, pretty bad beans. It was, robusta kind of beans as opposed to Arabica, and it was just not good. And the service convenience was that somebody had left it in that convenience store brewing for me for hours, so I didn't have to put hot water in it myself. And then over time, that value proposition might have been 75 cents a dollar. And then you look at a Starbucks and they enveloped a cup of coffee, higher quality bean. They actually went through the process of almost going into teaching us what espresso was at a time when espresso machines were very rare in the United States. We had more private jets than espresso machines when Starbucks started. The reality is that they started to envelop this higher quality product in an experience that they defined as affordable luxury, or the third place, the place between work and home. And the goal was to get you to want to come to this place, an affordable luxury environment, where when it was too formal to meet in a business setting, you'd want to go to Starbucks. When it was too informal to have somebody in your house, you'd want to go to Starbucks. It was the community living room. And that concept was able to drive the price up to what I like to call the brand nowadays $4 or Starbucks, right? It
Yeah.
really created a new price point.
So I have a son. He's has autism, and is one of his favorite jokes is he says, "Did you hear the news about Starbucks? They changed their name. It leads the listener a little bit, and then he says, "Well, they changed it to $5 because it costs a latte."
Ah, that's good. It had a double spin. It's
Yeah,
also sometimes called charbucks because they roast the bean to the third pop, so
yeah,
it's a little bit deeper roast. But
yeah.
uh,
True, true.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. What drove you? I mean, what got you into writing? Well, first of all, was Gold Standard your first book, and what drove you to write or get into this particular topic?
Sure. So my career is as a PhD psychologist, organizational focus, systems focused. I worked with the Pike Place Fish Market in Seattle, Washington, where they throw fish. There's a
Yeah.
pretty popular book called Fish that
Yep.
was
Love it.
written about him and great videos about him. But they created a very differentiated experience on this dead, slimy, cold fish. They enlivened a dead product with the
Mhm.
experience they provide. If you ever go to Seattle, you'll see the fishmongers throwing fish, catching fish, chanting. It's pretty wild.
Yep.
So my first book was working with the owner of that fish market and then writing a book with him about his company. From there, I worked with Howard Schultz and the team at Starbucks, wrote a book about them. From there, I wrote the Ritz Carlton book. It took a lot to get into the Ritz Carlton, and then from the Ritz Carlton, just all these books started to come, and my consulting career just flourished. And we were writing books about Mercedes Benz and the transformational journey that their CEO took, of which I
Right.
was part of the consulting pathway.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, those are kind of what we would call today our iconic brands, brands that, you got a couple that are out there and Chick-fil-A, what they're doing, and In-N-Out Burger, what they're doing, Jersey Mike's, what they're doing. You got a lot of these companies that are, they're at a point, but then they're going to grow and maybe double or triple in size in a very, very short period of time. How hard is it for companies to, they were built and they got to that point, but how hard is it for companies to go to that next level with the experience piece as
Well,
part
I
of?
think that it's hard to translate the experience throughout your organization, select people who are capable of being experience creators in keeping with the founder's vision. You take somebody like Zappos, who you mentioned earlier. It's just a small group of mostly guys from California who were trying to create a different type of experience brand. And Tony Hsieh was very much like a fraternity guy, just wanted people kind of hanging out, living, working together 24/7. Very cool affinity group. People like each other who came together. When you go to Las Vegas and you got a source of business 24 hours a day,
Mhm.
you got to figure out who you are so you can make sure that you filter out people who aren't going to fit in your culture and deliver your experience. And so you have to define it, select for it, develop talent around it, keep the culture constantly burning with a conversation about we are in the service business. We serve human beings, each other and our customers. And if you're not into that, go somewhere else. Nike's a great company to work for, and their whole commitment is we're in the winning business.
Right.
We are going to beat the competition, beat the snot out of the competition. There are a lot of people that works for, and you should work for them if that's who you are. But don't work for us if you're in the kind of softer, feelier, we're here to serve one another.
Yeah, I was able to interview a gentleman, Ben Bergeron, yesterday. He's a CrossFit trainer up in New England, and he was talking about culture and a lot of companies. What they'll do is they'll develop, say, their core values. They'll come up with maybe a mission or a manifesto, and it's all great and gets everybody a rally cry. But it's the how do you continue that message throughout, and then continue to build on it. How hard is that for companies to do?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Zappa's a classic example. So once they finally, I mean, Tony Hsieh, God rest his soul, he died last year in a really tragic accident. I had just talked to him not too long before that. He wrote the foreword of my book. I've worked with him closely. He was just a visionary. But basically what happened with that company was he did not want to have mission, vision, and values because he felt that was a very corporate approach, that companies do that all the time in some boardroom somewhere off on a retreat, hang it on the wall, and he just didn't think it was a sustainment strategy. So finally he said, look, I am just getting all these people sent to me who are not going to fit and work with us. I better define what it takes to be successful here, which is what I think culture is a lot about. It's like how do things get done here? And so he literally sent an email out and said, what are the qualities of people who really thrive in our environment? and their core values came out of it. So you heard core values like, we're a little weird, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of their core values. And so to preserve it, though, they literally would have people send in tapes of themselves about why they should work for Zappos. And if the person didn't look a little weird, they would rule them out. They just kind of, and if, because being humble is a part of their values,
Hmm.
if when they interviewed somebody, they were all about themselves, they ruled them out. And then once you get in, it's just a constant enculturation about those values, 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 and you're expected within the first 6 weeks of employment to actually make a contribution to make the organization better in one of those value ways as a team of new hires. The whole thing is, I think, a very concentrated commitment to we will defend this culture and we will advance it, and you're responsible and you've been chosen because you're capable.
Sam, you're a franchisee of a large company. That company has kind of a manifesto and a mission statement. Now you're opening your first store and you're looking to go to three, going to five, maybe 10. What I liked what you said earlier, and something that we have kind of learned here is instead of the founder or the owner saying these are the mission statements and everybody has to do them, by asking your people, your leadership team, what they feel the mission statements and adopt one of their each one of theirs kind of. But so is it important to get other people involved in the discovery of their mission statement to establish that culture platform? What do you think
I
there?
think every brand needs to say, this is why we exist. And we exist not to make a profit. A profit is a necessary condition of our long term existence. But if we only exist for that, we're going to put a pretty narrow amount of impact on the universe. And quite frankly, almost every employee wants to leave the world a better place than they found it. And they just want to figure out if they can merge their personal mission with a brand's mission, and if that's in synchrony, if they can work with that brand to help realize impact. So to me, I'm really much a believer that you need to say to people, we are having some big impact here and we're aspiring for even more. Would you like to yoke your wagon to our platform and make something happen here? And I'll tell you, millennials probably more than even my generation. I got to be honest with you, a lot of people in my generation just said, okay, you told me I'm supposed to do it and I get a paycheck, okay, I'll do it, no problem. I'm not going to ask what your social policies are, your corporate social responsibility. I'm just going to put my nose down and I'm going to trust a hard day's work is going to create a important outcome. Nowadays, I think people are saying, hey, I'm not so sure. And plus, just because you say it so, I'm a little skeptical because I've been told a lot of things that didn't turn out. So show me. And then maybe I'll be interested and I'll come around and see if I want to hook up with you for a period of time.
The research is shown it's bearing out. I think a lot of companies, whether it be Gallup, obviously the guys who are writing all these books and TED Talks and Simon Sinek, and I'm navigating in that world today. But it always seems like, well, when it comes to investing in establishing culture and cultivating culture daily through an organization, um, most organizations think that's important, but then they don't throw the resources behind it.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it's a business. You got to make money. I get it, but why is it looked at as more of a cost than rather an investment when it comes to culture?
Because it's inferred, right? I mean, in the end, we know things like having a strong culture decreases workplace accidents, attrition, churn, illnesses, disease, all kinds of things, work stoppages, all kinds of things that could take you down. But really, can you prove the positive side of the investment? It's more almost a defensive investment that a lot of people make. We don't want to lose our culture because we could lose productivity. But do we see a one-to-one ratio for every dollar we invest in a corporate function or an event or any of those things translating back into dollars? It's a slow burn and an inference.
Yeah.
We have a strong culture. We've invested a lot in our culture, and we have great productivity. And I think that's why some really stringent spreadsheet watchers have a hard time making sense of cultural investments.
Yeah, I mean, this is whether it's a church, and a lot of the leadership stuff that I'm seeing out there, servant leadership in particular. seems to be built around the faith based world. A lot of churches are looking to do that. It makes sense, right? But I mean, sports teams, they talk about culture. A gentleman yesterday in his gym or his athletes, it's about culture. And and it's one of those things when I talk about it, I'm always what I say is, guys, the platform, the foundation of your company. Well, I'll give you an example. The what I say the foundation of the company is the culture, but the soil that you build the culture on is the people. That's just a
Mm.
reference I do. But um, what are some steps? What are some measures that you can think of that you would a person would be able to do to kind of start that process of establishing a culture? Is there a few steps that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think it really starts with understanding what do you want people to feel every time they interact with you, either as a team member or as a customer, and really defining that. I think it's articulating to people that we are in the people business.
Yeah.
We're not, and Howard Schultz at Starbucks said, we're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee, right? We're in the people business. You are here to create a positive experience for people that creates enough value that they'll want to purchase our goods and services and come and tell their friends to come back for more, right? So that notion that we are in that business means we have to take care of our people and other people. And frankly, I have kind of gotten away from talking about customer experience
Hmm.
because I think it's just a bit of a weird misnomer. I mean, working with Airbnb, here's a classic example. On a given day, I might be an employee of Airbnb working out of the San Francisco area. And that night, I might be renting out my own room on the platform. So now I am a host. And then next week, I might be a guest in an Airbnb. So now I am the same person who's labeled host, guest, employee. In truth, you're the same person. And if we treat people inside the organization well, that treatment translates into the way they treat people outside of the organization. It's hard to have a great customer experience and a terrible employee experience. It's possible, but not common. So, my thinking on this is really know what you want people to feel
Hmm.
and then identify ways you're going to make sure they feel it and hit that hard. I want people to feel like they matter. So if they matter, how in the world am I going to show that?
Right.
I'm going to give them time, attention. I'm going to be excited when I get to see them. Um, I'll be really candid. I remember as a parent, and my kids are grown now, but when they were in adolescence, I'd come home sometimes and they're in their rooms. It's kind of quiet. I don't think I'm going to go poke the bear, knock on the door, say, "Hey, Dad's home. Hope all's well. What's going on?" I wouldn't face the rash of verbal dissatisfaction that I was going to hear. But in truth, I should have. I regret now looking back in those days, saying every single day I should have gone in there and mustered the courage to let them know how important and special they were. Now, they wouldn't have reciprocated it, I'm sure, but the point of the matter is that was my job. And I think we often do that with customers. Do we let that last customer know that they were really important and we're grateful that they came to us when they passed seven other, quick service restaurants on the way over?
Mm.
Or do we just next,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so the business I'm in as well, I'll ask the attendees, I'll say, what are ways that how a business drives sales? And, the standard answer is, well, get new customers. And then it's, of course, getting those customers to buy more frequently and then get the ones who buy more frequently to spend more money. And the one thing that just gets, well, not even realized until I say it, and you can see the light bulbs go off is, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit there, is what would happen to your business if you never lost a customer? And I say that, and it takes a minute for the process, and then they're like, "Wow, yeah." I go, "What's the most important customer? The next one or the one you have?" And if you would prioritize one, I'm going to say the one you have,
Yeah.
because so you know again, not losing a customer, those little things on there, is that what you're finding with the best companies? I mean, that's what builds loyalty, right?
Right. I mean, absolutely. I think that the person in front of you is the only person you have control over in terms of a relationship, right?
Right.
That next person may not come in at all. There may be nobody show up the rest of the day. This is the one you have the moment to influence. A lot of, I worked with Godiva and their chief marketing officer once said, when a person comes into your store, it is a 30 60, 90-minute, 90-second commercial
Mm.
about what your brand really is.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a lot better than any ad you could ever take out claiming your brand is something. You are now in real time infusing in that person whether or not who you are, so that they can go out and walk out the door and be a continuation of that commercial. Much better than the billboard that might be on the side of the road that claims you to be something. And so I always think of this as my moment with you. Like, this is all I got. The only perception you're going to have of me, other than what you might read in my books, is
Yeah.
whether or not right now I care about your audience and you. And I think we all have that moment, but we throw it away a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of people that are doing what you're doing and writing, and I just remember going to a national speakers conference and really wanting to meet somebody that on stage was talking, was connecting with me, and I had the opportunity to say hello to him, and he just wasn't interested in it. I was kind of, that wasn't cool. I
Yeah.
did. You, you need to be genuine. One of the things in the, let's just say in the restaurant industry per se, the average customer spends $18, in quick casual kind of stuff. And it used to be one customer told 10, and now they're saying one customer told 17.
Yeah.
And then that 96% of customers don't even complain. And it's such an amazing stat that people don't really know about. Meaning, if you lose a customer, there's customers who will never come in because of what that person said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I like to say everybody has a platform today,
mhm,
right? And my grandmother only had a few people she influenced because she would go to the store and come home. That was kind of her thing. Her circle of influence was her family and just a few neighbors, right? Today, my if my grandmother were around, she'd have 5,000 followers on Twitter probably. I don't know. Betty White did pretty well for herself.
yeah,
The point I get at is that you just don't know if that person that you are about to burn
mm,
is going to send a message that is going to resonate across Instagram and Twitter, and you just don't know. And then if the right person in that network sends it off to their network,
yeah,
holy moly, might you have a viral incident on your hand on the good side or on the bad side.
yeah,
Just remarkable care was given to me today, authentically. And I can't help but tell somebody, and they tell somebody who thinks it's such an emotionally unexpected event that they tell people. And before you know it, you've got this crazy story of just a little extra care and attention.
yeah. So the podcast is called Be Best You, and how that came about was, I have a week class where I get to sit down with leaders and future leaders, and what I've learned over the 35 years of doing this is that I can teach you the business, I can teach you how to do stuff, I can teach you where stuff gets done, do it with what. But the one thing that I've realized is that in order to do those things, you need to be the best version of yourself. And when someone comes in on Monday, we do kind of a life wheel. It's called In Life View. And then we usually say, is this the person you want to be? And most people want to be something better. And then we say, before you do that, we need to address your habits. So we go through a little bit of a Stephen Covey type of Atomic Habits kind of workbook sheet. So it's, who are you today? How'd you get here? And then how do you start to go, to where you want to go, you know, in the future. And we do a vision board at the end of the week. So that concludes the 5-day course. And some people might think, well, why do I feel like, talking about these brands and experience is part of the Be Best You? But for me, I think that you, you are your brand. It's kind of why, maybe you can steal the words from me here, but you are your brand. And if you don't represent your brand, who cares about other stuff, right? So as a leader, you have to be, well, people want to have to follow you. So you have to work on yourself to be the best version of yourself. How would you speak to that as a psychologist, right?
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, I love how much introspective work gets done there so people can become better leaders. Bottom line, brands are what people say about us when we're not around. So it is the sum total of people's perceptions of us that is our brand in life. We have an intended brand. We have a sense of our identity. We have an ideal self. We have a real self, an ideal self, a social self. There's all kinds of self perceptions out there. But I think the key to it all is you got to know, what can you be?
Yeah.
I mean, and there are some limitations to what I can be. There's a lot of run ramp though. And I got to know kind of my limitations and my run ramp. I got to challenge some of my limitations to say, are they really real? I mean, being an Olympic athlete, really a real limitation for Joseph Michelli, right? I'm not going to go there. But could I be a better artist? Sure. I just have created a fixed mindset around my art skills and I have not applied any energy or effort to it. If that's what I wanted to expand on, I could dedicate myself to that. Do I think I have core talent there? Probably not. So I would have to invest a lot of talent to get pretty mediocre. And so maybe I should look at where is my gift set, where if I invested the same amount of talent, I might have greater impact on the world around me and even greater sense of joy in what I get to do every day. So I love where all of this goes. I think brands have to do the same exercise.
Yeah.
I think leaders have to do that exercise to help move themselves so they can move others, right? I mean, we can't inspire others in your mess example.
Mhm.
You know, if we're a mess, we got to know, we got to clean our plate up a bit.
Yeah.
We got to know what our plate is. And I think we have to be real honest that we're not all together. Like we're not perfect.
Right.
People don't want to follow perfect leaders either. They don't want to follow messes, but they don't want to follow perfect leaders because it's intimidating. And quite frankly, we know they're not perfect and yet they act it. So it's that humility, that transparency, that self awareness that is the rocket fuel of great leaders.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's hard to, I mean, you get fooled so many times, but so in being the best version of yourself, again, in order to lead others, um, in through your books, well, I'll give you what I was thinking as you're doing a rapid fire thoughts were coming out of my head. I don't know if you picked up on that, but um, the simple act of opening a door for somebody. What I'll ask is, I'll say, when was the last time someone opened a door for you? And they have to think about it for a minute. And then I go, when that happens, are you surprised or is you take it for granted? And a lot of people say, well, actually, I was kind of surprised because it doesn't happen too often. And then I'll say, well, when you open a door for somebody and that person says, thank you, does that make you feel good? And then they say, yes. I say, well, do you want to feel better more? And they're like, yeah. I go, then open more doors.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that
I
if,
think that's on a figurative sense as well as a literal sense, right?
yeah, a little bit, right? Yeah,
I mean, I think the tangible opening a door is a very clean example of why aren't we creating more opportunities for other people too? Why do we believe there's scarcity and hold things tightly and lock the door versus, hey, we're in a shared experience here in humanity. Can I give something to you? The natural laws of reciprocity say that if I give something to you, you'll likely give it back to me at some level. Some people won't, right? Like I could give you the shirt off my back and you could take it and run the other direction. But most people feel a sense of social obligation to give back. You shouldn't give so that you will receive, but in the giving, we frequently receive something internally and the other person frequently gives something back. So I love where you're going. That door opening example is something I'm going to use. I just stole.
okay.
Let me
You
write
want,
that down. Where am I going to write that down?
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, right. But if you think about, well, today I believe is, I don't know if this is official, but I think today is National Kindness Day, if I'm not
Ah,
mistaken. I don't know, somewhere on social media I saw that, but
right.
in order to again put your best self further, you got to feel good about yourself, and doing something for others naturally makes you feel better about yourself. At least it does. I mean, most people do stuff to make themselves happy, right? Um, and but when they don't get that back, it's you see so many people just get, it's not worth it. Why even give the effort? Um, Amazing. Another thing is just pulling a chair out for a young lady. How many young ladies have never had a chair pulled out for them? And we talk about being not servient, gentlemanly,
Right.
and how that's maybe looked at as sexist today, which is, I get, but come on now, right? Um, but
Well, I think a
having
lot of
your
it comes down to intention, right? Like if
Yeah,
you're intentionally trying to say some kind of a dominant role or you're a less than, then that can come off as a very machismo sort of thing.
right,
On the flip side, I don't mind somebody extending courtesies to me without regard to considering what gender or sense of gender identity they might have. Yeah, for before the pandemic, I was really into a phrase. I think I even got the URL for it, which is surprisingly kind. I think we there was a whole movement of random acts of kindness.
Mhm.
I don't want kindness to be random, right? I want to be intentional about my kindness. I also don't want it to be kind just because I am going to get something from being kind. So the classic example is I'll be kind to my boss.
Yeah.
There's a person I'll be kind to intentionally,
Yeah.
but I won't be kind to somebody who's serving me in a restaurant. So I'm always looking for where can I surprise people with kindness? What's that little thing I might do? And I don't, I'm not talking about heroic kindness where you throw yourself under a bus for somebody. Just
Mm.
that little act of kindness that goes just a smidge beyond what they might have expected. And I
Yeah.
think that's where we should live our lives. And I think a lot of those door opening examples and chair, pull out examples are all just surprisingly kind in a time where we've lost a lot of that etiquette.
Yeah. And I mean, and you talk about a culture that wants that to happen. Um, One of the things it is, I don't think enough people recognize that it's not happening so that it can happen. Quick example, I was with a gentleman and there was a lady with a little daughter and she needed soup. And, here she is trying to get soup and holding the baby and nobody got up. And then finally I couldn't get there and I called the gentleman to go up and get it. And he came back. He goes, I can't believe I didn't see that. And for me, working for the gentleman I work for, he just not beat it into us, but he just made sure that we had that view that we saw opportunities to do something for others. And through every one of your books in here, especially in Starbucks and the Ritz Carlton one, you talk about a maitre d doing something really special, or a manager from a hotel doing something. Driving. I think one of your stories was, I don't know which general manager was, but it was a snowstorm or maybe a hurricane, and that person delivered something to somebody else. And those.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those are the key lesson I think is antenna up,
Yeah.
radar on, right? Like antenna up and radar on. People have needs that they're not saying, and
Mhm.
you observe the need without having to have the person verbalize the need. And the best service, the most magical service happens when somebody brings something to you just in time when you didn't even ask for it. I think of my mama Michelli, right? Like that refrigerator at the Michelli household was stocked with my favorite food. I thought that's the way refrigerators worked, right? Until I got into college and nobody was putting my favorite food in my refrigerator. And when I buy it, my roommates would eat it, right? So, it was a cruel world when I left mama's home. But the point is exactly that, right? It's that anticipating the unstated wants, needs, and desires of the people around you. And it doesn't have to be big overtures of solution. It's just that I saw you
Mhm.
and I saw a need and I stepped in for even a moment. Whoa. That person wasn't invisible in the dining room or wasn't invisible in the waiting room. You
Yeah.
saw them and you handed them something or you opened something, access to something for them.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to, I know you're busy, and what I'm hoping people will do is, and because I'm going to recommend they do, is purchase your books and look into some of the other tools that you have. And I've asked multiple authors, multiple people who have multiple books. I asked them a couple questions. John Gordon, I said, of all your books, which one would you read first? And he said, well, and he based on different situations. And I asked a couple other authors that. So I want to ask you, I'm 19, 25 years old. I just I'm a hard worker and I want to get smarter and I want to become a leader. Is there a book that you would recommend in your library here that would kind of get them started?
Yeah, well, first off, I always hate when people have me choose my books. It's like choosing my kids. Which kid do
Yeah.
I like the most? But so I like this question because it's really more about for a particular audience, where would the book go? So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Stronger Through Adversity, not
Okay.
because it's different, right? It's 140 leaders a 25-year-old is probably not going to interact with. You're probably not going to get to speak to Brian Cornell, the CEO of Target.
Right.
But I did. And he was kind enough to give pearls of wisdom that probably would be very beneficial for you to pay attention to, not just at the pandemic and post pandemic crisis kind of level, But
Right.
generally, how do you communicate? How do you shift positions from the front, middle, back as a leader? What is the importance of transparency and vulnerability to leadership? Those are the kind of lessons in there. So I would encourage them to pick up Stronger Through Adversity. The other cool part of that is a percentage of the proceeds go to a nonprofit that's helping frontline workers in the context of COVID-19.
Yeah, great. I mean, that's so the brand I'm with, and we have a mission statement. It's giving, making a difference in someone's life, and it could be from a lot of people think initially that's money, but having a son with special needs, it's just attention and time is maybe even more valuable than money sometimes, but
Yeah.
making other people feel valuable and valued um, is
Because they are, I
yeah,
mean, I think the thing is what the real tragedy is just allowing ourselves to celebrate the value of other people, right?
yeah.
It's not even having to make it happen in a way. Do you know what I mean? They are. It's just us taking the time to
But
be able
I mean,
to do
that's what
it.
every one of your books is about. I mean, it's really whether it's when I go to a hotel, I want people to welcome me. When I buy a car, I want them to feel like they're not just getting a commission. Or
Yeah.
when I'm at UCLA hospital, I don't want to feel like I'm just the next person they're going
Yeah.
to poke me with. You know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I love kind of where your mind goes with this
oh,
because at the
that's great.
fundamental level they are value, right? Like if no other reason than they give you money, they're of value, right?
Yeah.
Now that's a tragic limited view of humanity is that the only worth they have is the ability to give me money. I
Right.
mean, that would be really sad because it speak a lot about you too, right? Because then your only worth is your ability to give somebody money. And that's pretty narrow view of human value.
Mm,
And so I'm always looking for Danny Meyer, the great restaurateur. Setting the Table was the book that really rocked it, and Blue
yeah.
Smoke. He's just got so many incredible. But Danny once said, "We're all walking around with invisible signs on us, right? And our job is to read the sign. You know, leave me alone while I'm eating so I can have a conversation. Treat me with respect by honoring the context and giving me the space. Understand the invisible sign that says, please engage me in a conversation because I'm needing to have a human contact. It's challenging, but it's such a great job every day is to find the value and find the need, connect with the value and solve the need.
That's kind of the perfect, really conclusion because the generation that I'm speaking to, a lot of them have never been able to experience what again we're asking them to deliver. And what your book does is it gives a lot of your books do gives a lot of little examples of things that they can then do in their own genre, whether it's a coffee shop or a auto mechanic or whatever. And I think that's what they need is just ideas. And then I don't know the term, you probably know it is life doesn't always have to be transactional. It can be interactional, I think was the
Mm-hmm.
word. I'm probably butchering that a little, but that just makes so much sense to me. Don't make it about money.
Yeah, if I were 25 again, oh gosh, if I were 25 again, I
Yeah.
would have just wished somebody would have told me the more I serve others, the more successful my life's going to be. Service serves me, and the less I think about me, the more I think about serving well, the better off I'm going to be. It's proven really true for me. It just took me a little time past 25 to figure it out.
And just that alone, that last statement there, you just become a better person for that. So, um, Joseph, I've super, thank you for coming on. I know you're busy. It's been a dream of mine
Oh,
to,
come on, coach. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here. Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
Well, I appreciate that. And your wife has been great. She going back and forth from emails. I messed up a couple times, but tell her I said thank you for that.
Yeah, I
And
marry well. I'm pretty good at that. That's my
all right.
one superpower.
Yeah.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right. Yeah. Well, this is Coach Hughes and Joseph Michelli. Check out his books, and we'll see you guys soon from the Be Best You podcast. Thanks again.